The ideas that the soul, or psyche, can leave the physical body while the body is unconscious or in a trance mind state, that the dream world is a real place that serves as a kind of crossroads between the realms of life and death, that we can communicate with dead ancestors in dreams or trance, and that when we die, we experience something similar to entering into or waking up from a dream, are all prehistoric premises in origin that were already codified into religious beliefs by the era of Sumer and the earliest now known city-states. Ancient Mesopotamian metaphysics described the realm beyond death as an underworld, being the first to literally place hell in a cave, which they called in Ugaritic Kur, where the flesh of the dead was hung from meat hooks, and their lost souls spent eternity squatting and eating dust. This Sumerian concept of an underworld afterlife, thought to be accessible via dreams and trance while still alive, blended with the Egyptian Amduat, River of Death, of their Book of the Dead cycle, and these both informed the later Hebrew and Greek ideas of the soul's immortality in what we call today hell. In the Hebrew Torah, dreams are interpreted as visions predicting the future and as messages from angels. In the Greek myths, a descent into the underworld, or a katabasis, Greek for going down, occurs as a chapter in many characters' life cycles, but it is the demi-deity of song alone, called Orpheus in Greek, based on Dumuzid of Sumer, who adds an anabasis, coming up, to reascend as a psychopomp who can cross over into the home of the dead and return while still living. In some respects, the character of Christ in the canonized Gospels was based on the legends describing Dumuzid and Orpheus as well. In the Norse myths, the goddess of death's name is Hel, but the same character may be traced at least as far back as the Sumerian demoness Ereshkigal, who was also prototype for the Greek Persephone. Following the lifetime of Jesus, from exactly 2,000 years ago on, there appears to have been a major theological shift from the belief that all souls ended up in hell to the belief that only the damned souls ended up there, souls that had sinned or committed a crime against God. Contemporary to the development of Islam in the Levant, in the foothills across the Himalaya to the east, a psychological model called the Barlow Total was being formulated and studied as a blending of Buddhist dogmas with traditional Bon shamanism. According to this Tibetan Book of the Dead model, as well as to contemporary Christian mystics in Europe, the vengeful, wrathful, and demonic expressions we may experience in our final moment of death are merely regrets acting as hungry ghosts that cling to the soul as it rises from its mortal vessel, drawing it back down, in the Tibetan version, into the realm of reincarnation, and into rebirth in one of the 6 Bardo Lokas. According to this model, one whose karma is impeccable may attain instantly upon their moment of death to the utmost realm of the Chikai Bardo and enter oneness with the primary clear light. To this end, it is nowadays widely believed few have truly attained, including, by various accounts, Enoch, Hiram, Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad. Such latter-day shamans comprise a modern-day pantheon of psychedelic man-gods, the so-called ascended masters of contemporary trance-channeled theosophy, but their actual teachings are lost on the din and throng of their New Age followers. In 1978, American horror, fantasy, and sci-fi author and screenwriter Richard Matheson, 1926 to 2013, wrote the novel What Dreams May Come, the title being taken from a line of William Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1, soliloquy about suicide. Matheson's was neither the first nor last novel fiction by this name, but it is the only one to have been made into a film. 1998's Academy Award-winning Interscope Communications produced, Universal Studios released, 113-minute-long adaptation of Matheson's novel cast Robin Williams, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Annabella Sciorra into a story Matheson claimed in the introduction was fictional only in its characters. His book is based on his own personal research on religious beliefs about the nature of the afterlife and contains a long bibliography of sources for further research. For those interested in learning this model in its entirety, Tor Books published Matheson's complete philosophy as The Path. In the same year, they published a reissue of the novel to accompany the film's 1998 release. Matheson was raised a Christian Scientist and was influenced by Theosophist Harold W. Percival, 1868 until 1953. Matheson's novel cites Christian mystic Emanuel Swedenborg, 1688 to 1772, Swiss-American psychiatrist and thanatologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 1926 to 2004, as well as American physician and near-death experience researcher Raymond Moody, Jr., 1944, ongoing. Also Italian poet Dante Alighieri, 1265 to 1321, author of the Divine Comedy, 1320, and the Greek myth of Orpheus and Eurydice also informed the plotline. The prologue to the story is narrated by a man telling about a visit paid him by a psychic woman, whom gave him a manuscript she claimed was dictated to her by his deceased brother, Chris. Most of the novel consists of this manuscript. Chris, a middle-aged man, is injured in an auto accident and dies in the hospital. He survives as a ghost and lingers a while haunting his widow. Chris's family contacts a medium who can see but not hear Chris, and they conduct a seance. Chris tries to communicate with them, but tires and goes off to sleep. When he awakens, he is horrified to find himself staring at a figure of himself conversing with the family. The psychic is unknowingly feeding this figure some answers he expects to hear, unaware that he is not conversing with the real Chris. During this failed seance that ended up reinforcing his wife's belief that Chris did not survive death, an unidentified man, later revealed as Cousin Albert, approaches Chris and welcomes him into Summerland, a term borrowed from Theosophy and contemporary Wicca to describe the Abrahamic concept of heaven. Soon after, Chris learns his widow, named Anne, has committed suicide, and that her soul has fallen into the lower realm, or hell, where she will remain for 24 years, the remainder of her intended lifespan. Albert, whom is able to visit the lower realm, reluctantly agrees to lead Chris into hell so that he can attempt to retrieve Anne. The descent described in the work has parallels to Dante's Inferno, with Albert leading Chris like Virgil guiding Dante, and hell being described as a cold, dark cave populated by violent criminals who cling to and attack the passerby. Confer the fifth circle of Dante's Inferno, populated by the souls guilty of the sin of wrathfulness. As the duo approach the corner of hell where Anne's soul now resides, Albert again cautions Chris that he might find himself stuck in the lower realm, and explains that Anne will not immediately recognize Chris, and that Chris may suffer amnesia too if he stays in Anne's hell for too long. After a moment of disorientation, where he starts to forget his own identity, Chris delivers a monologue of appreciation for Anne, and then decides to stay with her and not return to Summerland. As he begins losing consciousness, Anne recognizes him and realizes what has happened. Chris awakens in Summerland. Albert, who is amazed that Chris was able to rescue Anne, informs him that she has been reborn on Earth because she is not ready for Summerland. Chris wants to be reborn too, despite Albert's protests. Chris learns that he and Anne have had several past lives, and in all of them they had a special connection with each other. As the manuscript comes to a close, Chris explains that he is soon going to be reborn and will forget all that has happened. The film has significant differences from the novel in its plot and its vision of the afterlife. Story elements that do not show up in the film include astral projection, telepathy, a seance, and the term Summerland. The details of Chris's life on Earth in the novel differ from the film. Only Chris and his wife, called Anne, die, while their children, who are grown-ups rather than youngsters, remain alive as minor characters. Albert and Leona are the people they appear to be, as opposed to in the film, and the character, the Tracker, does not appear in the book. In the novel, Albert is Chris's cousin, and Chris and Anne are rural types rather than the urbanites portrayed in the film. He is not a pediatrician, nor is she a painter. He is a Hollywood screenwriter, and she has a variety of jobs. The special edition DVD and the 2011 Blu-ray release show an alternate ending, the ending from the novel, in which reincarnation is not a choice, but part of a natural order. Chris and Annie will meet again in their new lives, but Annie must atone for killing herself. Her new incarnation will die young, and Chris will spend the remainder of this life as a widower before the two are again reunited in heaven. The film then goes to Sri Lanka, where a woman is giving birth to a girl, presumed to be Annie. In Philadelphia, a boy is born, presumably Chris. The film, Waking Life, directed by American filmmaker Richard Linklater, 1960 to ongoing, premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2001 and was given a limited release in the United States on October 19, 2001. The film is centered on a young man who wanders through a succession of dreamlike realities wherein he encounters a series of individuals who engage in insightful philosophical discussions. This unnamed young man lives an ethereal existence that lacks transitions between everyday events and eventually progresses toward an existential crisis. He observes quietly, but later participates actively in philosophical discussions involving other characters, ranging from quirky scholars and artists to everyday restaurant goers and friends, about such issues as metaphysics, free will, social philosophy, and the meaning of life. Other scenes do not even include the protagonist's presence, but rather focus on a random isolated person, group of people, or couple engaging in such topics from a disembodied perspective. For example, in one scene, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy reprised their characters from Linklater's 1995 film Before Sunrise and discussed the premise of reincarnation and the implication of new souls. Gradually, the protagonist begins to realize that he is living out a perpetual dream, broken up only by occasional false awakenings. When he interacts directly with a passing girl, he reminds himself that she is a figment of his own dreaming imagination. Afterwards, he starts to converse more openly with other dream characters, but he begins to despair about being trapped in a dream. The protagonist's final talk is with a character, played by Richard Linklater, whom he had briefly encountered earlier in the film. This last conversation reveals this other character's understanding that reality may be only a single instant, that the individual interprets falsely as time, and thus life, that living is simply the individual's constant negation of God's invitation to become one with the universe, that dreams offer a glimpse into the infinite nature of reality, and that in order to be free from the illusion called life, the individual need only accept God's invitation. The protagonist is last seen walking into a driveway when he suddenly begins to levitate, paralleling a scene at the start of the film of a floating child in the same driveway. The protagonist uncertainly reaches toward a car's door handle, but is too swiftly lifted up above the vehicle and over the trees. He rises into the endless blue expanse of the sky until he disappears from view. The practice of accessing the dream realm while awake using intoxicants, naturally poisonous chemicals processed into psychotropic drugs, sensory stimulants, books, etc., incense, etc., music, etc., setting in general, physical excitement, sex, dance, a quest, etc., or its opposite, calm, meditative trance, has, since the foundation of Babel, some 4,000 years ago, comprised the study of ritual magic, or, simply put, vestigial shamanism. The goal of this self-inflicted, usually alchemically admixture-induced, abnormal mental condition is to attain that mental trance of being in a dream state while awake, and thus to enter into that twilight zone between life and death, hopefully to bring back some intelligible information useful to their own and to all of our development as individuals and as a species, though this rarely proves the result. Though such magic ritual intoxication may mimic the feeling while awake of being asleep and in a lucid dream, one experience is passive, dreaming, and the other is active, hallucination. This is why most attempts at using chemicals to augment and prolong the sensation of being in such a mental limbo between the real and the imaginary usually fail to yield any truly useful results. In rare instances, such as at heroic dosage levels by first-time users, or, as is more often the case, entirely at random, inspiration strikes and leaves behind some form of lightning in a bottle. However, for the vast majority of attempts made to attain inspiration from chemical intoxication, the result is not flowers, but fertilizer. Modern media attempts artificially replicating this chemically caused, so-called spiritual condition using deus ex machinae, an optical illusion of God from machinery, and special effects, editing, lighting and sound, magical trickery. But the result is very much different. Instead of the natural, organic growth of an experience, cinema provides a calcified relic that can never, nor should ever, be changed. Instead of the dream-like state between waking and sleep, modern movies capture only the dreams themselves in crystal clarity of those modern wizards who create them. For thousands of years, theater reflected moral explanations for mankind's fate. Again, from prehistoric era smoking circles, the practice of placing a light source between a seated audience and a standing performer has defined what has come to be called a theater's proscenium arch. This membrane between the fictional drama being acted out on stage and the real world of silent, entranced audience members has proven a valuable portal for not only transporting across inspirations from a better future, but also for attaining group catharsis, providing a shaman a medium by which to work their medical miracles, and thus, by whatever proxy activity obscured by such fanciful misdirection, heal the world with their art. In short, the arts and crafts of magic that began as simple shadow play on cave walls have, over the intervening millennia, evolved by the early 20th century AD into cinema. Modern cinema has different rules altogether from the long-established live-action plays performed in traditional theater. How characters are blocked relative to one another, mise-en-scene, and how this may be cropped into the frame are yet new concerns for auteur creators. Shot composition and cinematography are relatively recent renovations to the ancient arts of the thespians. For example, the camera is symbolic of the audience's collective eye. When cinema audiences sit in a darkened theater room, they are sitting inside a cavernous, empty skull, looking out at the world through the eye of the camera's focus. Using the camera as the audience's eye, cinema does something live performance cannot. It puts the audience inside the deus ex machina that descends in the end to unravel the plot line. Cinema can put the average audience member directly inside the head of any character, and this can make the division between being a creator and becoming their character disappear almost completely. However, what cinema loses from live performance in its potential for environmental spontaneity, it gains by providing an assembly line consumer product that is the same every time. If a viewer connects with a movie's characters, they will repeat their original subconscious interaction with the movie identically during every later viewing. If a viewer does not connect with the movie's characters, they will feel discomfort in the context of the movie and generally avoid it altogether. After all, there are always more movies to choose from, and new ones are being made worldwide every day. Industrialism weaponized art. The camera made the proscenium arch into a threadbare screen. The invention of the motion picture camera revolutionized theater. In amphitheaters of old, orators would profess their philosophies, and audiences would gather to overhear and share ideas. Now we are all deeply indoctrinated into a cult of sleep. Civilization is a tacit, unspoken conspiracy we all agree to obey. Silence is complicity. Truth is treason. Modern theaters are living temples to great gods no more, and now house only fallen stars.